So go over just the big things. I like to go over all the major key fundamentals of the forehand.
Yep.
Then I'm going to zero in on the area in which we want to help you with, and then
Yep.
show you the contrast between what you're doing, what we're seeing Serena do, and kind of the plan to go about getting it done. So generally you see a good unit turn. Serena sometimes releases a little bit earlier, but the main point is you can tell that she's turning her shoulders.
Yeah, yeah.
And then from here, she gets the racket where she's getting the racket under the ball. She's a little stressed on this ball. She does a great job of using her body, and you do a great job of that. We'll see that when we pull up your video. The key here is contact, and right before and right after contact. And I want you to notice how the racket face is there.
Yeah.
And you can see how the racket face is there.
Yeah, I don't do that.
And how the racket face is here. You can really see, I call it sometimes looking through a window. From her vantage point, she can always look through her strings. Even here, she can pretty much see through her strings. And that's probably one of the biggest things we're going to work on with your forehand, in the sense that your release a lot of times is just straightforward. So it reminds me of what we were talking about last night. You were talking about how you're used to like keep the milk carton on your arm, and it's like keep it straight.
That was the best story about that. She said back in the day they used to like cut off a milk carton, put it up on the arm to keep their arm straight.
Oh,
that's intense.
And like this.
Yeah.
That's
with the wooden rackets.
That's crazy.
That's just how old I am.
Going through all the stuff we talked about. Good shoulder turn. You do a great job of using your body to pull the racket around. Contact looks great. This is exactly kind of what we were seeing in Serena here, where we're talking about looking through the window of the racket. And then what we see from here, you're right around here. You can see there's a little bit of tension where you're holding on to the racket and not releasing it. And you can see how, from this vantage point, I can see through the strings this way instead of having where you're able to see through the strings. And then the follow through looks good. So that area is what we're going to work on. The reason we want to work on that is to give you slightly more heavier ball, where you can kind of, what we call shot tolerance. You'll have a higher shot tolerance because you're going to be able to consistently produce a little bit more consistent topspin as you're hitting through the ball. Whereas sometimes your ball gets a little flat and you feel the tension. The other kind of benefit is that, I don't know if it's in this clip, sometimes we see a lot more of the tension when the ball gets up higher. This is an extreme example, but when you get this ball, and because it's so high, you're very stiff because there's no release in the sense of creating some topspin off that ball. So that's one thing, another added benefit of when you get a higher ball now. Obviously you're taking this really high. You'll be able to still generate some spin to keep the ball in, and you won't feel so, hopefully, so tense about dealing with that high ball. Okay? Okay, so very first thing, I'll get you over here. And I'm just going to walk you through the difference and the progression of what we want to work on. Basically, go ahead and shadow your normal forehand first. Slow. And stop at contact. So everything to contact is very good. And so a lot of times I'll use the word pull one and pull two, meaning that pull one is what you're doing right now, which is pull to contact. That's pull one. Pull two is where we start activating more of your forearm to get a little, And so what we want is, as you're pulling pull one, and we're brushing the pull two. So you can really see how, as you're hitting, look at the strings. Compared to.
Just going out.
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay. So go ahead and let's just shout out really slow. Really pull the contact.
Here.
And then, good. Good. And you're just going to feel a subtle difference, and now you're going to use your forearm to turn the racket during contact a little bit. Good. So you can see as we're kind of creating some sense of your racket, I'm going to constantly look for, a thing we can constantly look for is that we can see that you're able to see through your strings, and that as we move on, that we don't get to the point where your racket is straight. So that's very good. Let's come up to the net for a second. See my racket. All the way up here. Ooh. One nice thing about using the net is that's kind of your telltale sign, as if you're going, you're going to wind up hitting net, where if you were swinging this way, through contact here, you can really see how I'm really using my forearm. So I would get even a little bit closer and just reach through contact and really focus on creating this motion and just really focusing on that motion. Try to keep the arm a little straighter. Yes. And change the focus from here, to rotating, almost again like the analogy if you were turning a knob on a door. Yes. Good. Good. So that's exactly what we want here. Let's take a step back right here. The exact same thing we're going to shadow to. I'm going to drop a ball and see if we can keep that, and then we're going to continue to press on. So I want you to really focus on that, kind of like you said, turning the knob. Okay. Yeah, that was good. Kind of two things we can start looking at to really judge where you are is I look at relatively where your arm is, how much your arm's moving, and how much the racket's going to start traveling now. So.
So my arm's still moving. So in theory, should my arm not be moving kind of at all?
You're doing a great job here. So your arm will move a little bit, but what I'm saying is you notice how we can still see through the racket, and now because easiest way to say it, now because you're starting to kind of turn the knob, your racket is having a much bigger movement pattern this way. Compared to before, since you didn't, your pattern was out here.
Right.
World class.
And hopefully you can start to you see this little marker of how much your racket's moving because you're using your forearm more. This is this is a good one.
Okay.
Critics.
And work on your line drawing, Kevin.
Yeah, hey.
Stylus thingy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Even though you're a little further away, but you can definitely tell there's a huge difference on how.
Yeah. So it's sort of parallel to my head, not. Okay. Yeah.
On even the depth of, you can see how your racket's pointing out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're making slow progressions.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing? It's I think a lot of it too, when you have this straighter release, you end up wristing the end, and so when you finish, your wrist is out a lot of times. I'd be curious to see what hers was. I didn't pay attention to that.
She definitely had some.
Okay.
She held on to it.
But on this one, another benchmark to know that you're doing the forearm release is that your wrist actually will come towards you on the finish instead of open this way.
Okay, right.
If it's open, you came across most likely, because it's really hard to release your arm and then turn it back.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're gonna feel on the finish like it's coming more towards you, rather than, where you were coming when you're releasing, it was coming like this.
Yeah, okay, right.
Instead of like that, to where this is coming towards you.
Right.
Just another benchmark to kind of feel. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Yeah.
Let's get you to move back 2 steps behind the service line. Now we're gonna have Ian toss you a ball. So you're gonna do 2 shadows and he's gonna toss you one.
Stay here?
Yep. So 2 shadows, again working on finish.
Sorry.
Okay, 2 shadows. Really slow, find the tempo. Yeah. If you look from that side. it looks like. But.
First one looked a little stiff, yeah.
So yeah. Now that we really introduce the ball and you start hitting, it's a little stiffer. The one thing I will say is that we're not seeing, you're seeing this a little bit, kind of what you were mentioning, but we're not seeing where the wrist is jetting forward.
Okay.
Record. You can really see how when you're brushing up.
Yeah.
Compared to a straighter swing.
Yeah.
And it's just more muscle. Like you can tell there's a lot more tension involved in the one on the right.
Yeah.
Let's get you to move halfway back between the baseline and service line. So really focusing on how much now your stroke's more vertical and keeping the racket face, at least through contact, a little bit opens up there.
It's not too bad.
Just to see the difference in how your racket's approaching the ball this way, or before you were here going there. And that's what we want. I think it's like two things. Really focusing on continue to keep this vertical, and as we start moving back, you'll notice how it might shrink a little bit, but really focusing on staying relaxed at the end. Here we go, let's continue. Let's get you on the baseline.
Good job.
Really focus on turning through contact and relaxing at the end. Good.
Feels like it's coming off the racket differently.
How would you describe that difference?
It's a lot more, it's got spin and it's going up and coming back down, and yeah, it feels very different from that flat ball I was hitting.
But definitely totally different through before contact, you were like straight.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think also the difference of how your racket, look at that. How your racket's approaching and brushing up on the ball now.
Yeah,
That's really good.
Yeah. And also just how your racket's approaching the ball.
Yeah, okay.
You can really see where your racket's here and the ball's here. The ball's probably a little bit lower. Whereas your racket's here, the ball, and that's, again, I have to work on my drawing skills. It's really a struggle today. And that's what's creating what we're talking about, the heavy ball. You're now swinging up and through. We're here, it's just through.
Right, okay.
And as a result, you're seeing, you're like, the ball's going, it's going, but then it's coming down.
Yeah.
And that's what we want.
Yeah.
Good. Let's take a look at a couple more. Just gonna play it. You're doing a really good job of every swing. Look at the space that you're creating. Yeah. And this is kind of ironic. Let's see what happens here. Yeah.
You're gonna keep it longer. Yeah.
You kept it longer. This is one of the balls where
it's a higher ball.
I remember you getting very muscled, and now this ball's shoulder high.
Yeah,
and look how.
It's really good.
Yeah, okay. That actually felt pretty good.
Good.
So all we're gonna do is just focus on going rallying with Ian. Just focusing on a nice rally ball. We're not trying to adjust the ball or anything.
That's better.
Stop it. How did those feel?
Oh, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, some good, some not so good.
That's actually good.
I think your execution is really high, though.
Okay.
You got it. You had a little portion there where in the middle where you got really stiff and tight, and once he said it, you went back to being relaxed, and it was better. That's really good. Like really, really good.
Can I see? Sorry. Great. Yeah. Nice job. Nice job.
Yeah, that was a good ball. Good acceleration.
Oh, that's really good.
She gives herself enough time. That's good. Continue vertical swing. Seeing how you handled like this ball now.
Yeah.
Before it was really stiff, very tight, very muscled. Yeah. This is where we were in the beginning. Looking at where your racket is.
Okay.
Looking at where, oh, look at that. Good line. Looking where your racket is and how you're coming up with the ball.
Yeah.
And then again, how many frames? One frame, and then pretty much your racket's starting to straighten out.
Yeah.
This is off a very difficult ball. And look at how your racket's from above your shoulder.
That's good.
Yeah. How it's just straight. No vertical, very minimal vertical swing compared to on that ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think my idea of trying to get topspin was sort of by going that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rather than, even though I would see that stroke.
Until you see it on video, and even if you have that picture in your mind of what's going on, until you see it on video and you're actually like comparing it, it's such a difference. Even I think last time we were looking at like our strokes, I even looked at mine. I was like, oh wow, I got to work on that. And it's just until you see video and you have the chance of going step by step like this process. It's hard to do. Like even the very first ball when we fed it, you instantly want to go back. And so most people have this thing of like, hey, just relax and swing. The exact thing you've been doing is going to happen over and over again until you figure out the process of training it one step at a time. If the jump's too big, it's going to naturally just go right back.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Really good.
Thanks.
Really good.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Grab a drink.
Yeah.
You can relax.